This is the story of Rude, a guy who is constantly belittled, bullied, and even betrayed by his own teammates. Because of this, he was forced to violate a sacred taboo. The young man chewed ferociously, the sound echoing as he consumed the meat. Before him with desperate intensity, in moments, the creature was devoured completely. The giant monster had been methodically dismembered. Its colossal hands were a terrifying sight. Yet, as he swallowed the last morsels of his foe, an extraordinary transformation began within him. A mental notification echoed. Skills acquired, roar, battle axe, a surge of power, unlike anything he'd known, coursed through his veins. From the shadows, a pack of wolves observed him. Their glowing blue eyes shimmered with an unsettling allure. A long-forgotten noble's journal had warned against consuming monster flesh. This young man, however, had boldly transgressed, defying a deeply ingrained societal prohibition. Facing the menacing pack, fear was conspicuously absent. Resolve filled his heart for humans. Consuming monster flesh meant inheriting their demonic essence. An uncontrollable, indescribable thrill surged through him, coupled with enhanced physical capabilities. This newfound power, however, came at a steep price: a searing headache, waves of nausea, and a creeping venom spreading through his system. Despite the turmoil racking his body, he remained steadfast. A silent vow to escape this fate formed on his lips. Before he could fully formulate the thought, the monsters lunged. Their attack foreshadowed a brutal end for anyone who underestimated their ferocity. Revenge. He vowed silently. Sometimes, he mused, when one fully embraces the darkness within, humanity is shed, and a monstrous transformation occurs. With fierce determination, he swung his weapon, slashing forward with deadly precision. In the blink of an eye, he used his own teeth to tear into every monster in view. Skills acquired, appraisal. His grip tightening on his weapon, he charged ahead relentlessly. Skills acquired, ultrasonic detection, gluttony. A torrent of blood erupted from his opponent, a testament to the brutal chaos of battle. Was this the end? Or merely the beginning? A colossal serpent, its eyes razor-sharp, loomed before him. Calmly, he selected his next meal, gnawing on it while his gaze remained fixed on the serpent. Finally, the system notification chimed again. Skills acquired, swift step, lightning shot, and countless others followed. Facing the towering serpent, he exuded unwavering confidence. With surprising ease, he pried open its massive jaws, his weapon pulsed with a terrifying surge of newfound power. In an instant, the serpent convulsed violently as a storm of lightning coursed through its body. Having fully absorbed the giant serpent, he acquired the skill, Venomous Bones. A satisfied nod accompanied his examination of the crisp, brittle remains. Skills acquired, web creation. This newfound ability made everything before him seem laughably weak. Exhaustion, however, began to set in. Breathing heavily, he struggled to maintain his upright posture, yet his resolve remained unshaken. His eyes narrowed with lethal intensity as he stared ahead. They better stay out of my way. Confronted by a legion of powerful monsters lurking in the shadows, he felt no fear, only the unwavering readiness to retaliate. They were like an organized army, poised to strike at any moment. His eyes blazed with fierce determination as he fixed his gaze upon them. The border city of Balagona, lush, beautiful, and blessed by nature, was nonetheless surrounded by a vast forest concealing countless labyrinths. One labyrinth in particular had earned a notorious reputation, the Miasma Labyrinth. The air within relentlessly sapped the strength of any adventurer daring enough to enter. Most adventurers loathed it. He, however, returned regularly, hence the moniker, Miasma Scavenger. He inspected his gathered collection, a quiet satisfaction spreading across his features, the light in his eyes flickering with anticipation. This would suffice. Standing at the threshold of the dense green woods, a wave of contentment settled in his chest. The miasma grass, infamous for its lethal vapors, remained a rare and vital ingredient. With a light-hearted hum, he secured the herbs into his pouch, the curl of a pleased grin not fading. There was no need to overexert himself. He told himself that this amount would be enough to carry him through the next few days. Still pleased, he turned around to leave, but before he could lift his foot, a sharp noise sliced through the quiet. A horde of revoltingly oversized miasma rats had amassed around him. Their grotesque appearance inspired no sympathy. Reacting immediately, he sprinted ahead, blade drawn, his posture locked in determination. The monsters were notorious for their corrosive fog threat that drove others away, but not him. He steadied his stance and struck without hesitation, the assurance in his heart unwavering. He was certain of his immunity. The venom couldn't touch him, his weapon carved cleanly through flesh and bone, each motion practiced and brutal. The creatures were caught off balance, their scattered formation left them vulnerable. When cornered, he didn't flinch from biting into them with his own teeth. He eliminated them swiftly, but their numbers rallied quickly, reassembling into a tighter formation. Their jagged fangs glimmered with menace as they prepared to tear him apart. Then, a sudden voice erupted behind him. In a split second, one of the rats exploded in fire, sending shrapnel and smoke billowing. He froze in place, stunned as measured steps approached from behind. A figure stepped into view, murmuring criticisms about his inaccurate casting. A rowdy band of adventurers followed him, their crude chuckles announcing their presence. One of them casually remarked that the blast should have landed closer. Rude's expression darkened as he recognized them faces he'd seen repeatedly at the guild. The fire wielder advanced with an overly friendly grin, remarking in a casual tone that he had recognized Rude and thought it necessary to assist. When it appeared he was struggling, Rude ignored the arrogant tone, pulling himself upright and replying with composed sarcasm that a bit of warning would have been appreciated. The other man blinked in mock innocence, claiming that he had clearly shouted his spell's name. At that moment, one of the larger men in the rear bellowed out in excitement, pointing toward the field with a delighted expression, proclaiming that the miasma grass seemed abundant in the area. The group instantly burst into enthusiastic chatter. Rude stood stunned, his thoughts racing. So they had been tracking him this whole time for the herbs. The others grumbled at the accusation, and one of them stepped closer. He insisted that they were simply fellow adventurers surviving like anyone else, that their encounter had been purely coincidental, and they had stepped in to help. With a scoff, he added that it was laughable how an ungrateful scavenger like Rude, who couldn't even offer basic thanks, now dared to challenge their intentions. Surrounded and clearly outnumbered, Rude registered the sheer arrogance radiating from their stares. Their expressions dripped with condescension, fueling his inner turmoil. He shut his eyes tightly, knowing he had no ground to stand on, and forced out a trembling apology, stating that he had misjudged them and was grateful for their help. His fists tightened at his sides, his hands quivering from the bitterness swelling inside him. Within the bustling heart of Balagona, at the ever-crowded Full Belly restaurant, he found himself hurled through the entrance with a thud, landing gracelessly on the stone street. Above him, the same familiar group of troublemakers loomed there, sneers dripping with cruel amusement. One of them leaned down mockingly, jeering at how he still reeked of filth despite setting foot inside a restaurant. They continued to toss jabs at him, ridiculing his presence with the ease of those long accustomed to targeting the weak. Their laughter echoed behind them as they wandered off, engaged in light conversation, as if what they had just done meant nothing, he thought with bitterness surging in his chest. Those were supposed to be the elite slayers of monsters, paragons of strength, people like them, people not like him, burdened with a skill as underwhelming as immunity to abnormal statuses. He often wondered if he even deserved the same title. Teeth clenched tightly, he bore their mockery in silence. His supposed unique trait held some merit in the toxic depths of the miasma labyrinth, but it offered no aid when it came to the brutal task of defeating monsters of baseline expectation for any respectable adventurer. Because of this, no party ever accepted him. They left him to scrape out a living alone, a scavenger crawling through the forgotten corners of the lower dungeon levels. The very nature of his skill had stamped him as a cast-off adventurer, in name only, discarded and disregarded. Even now, after everything he had endured, he still found himself struggling to fend off oversized rats. Was this really all his life would ever amount to? In the dim shadows of his small room, he curled up on the rickety bed, hands pressed to his head, quietly crushed beneath the weight of it all. By the time dawn arrived, he stood at the doors of the Adventurers Guild, his expression marked with determination. He told himself he would need to gather more miasma grass while the coins he'd earned yesterday still lasted. But something felt off. The atmosphere inside buzzed with an unusual tension. The crowd larger and louder than normal. A ripple of unease stirred in his chest. Something wasn't right. He was greeted with a familiar nickname, spoken with a tone that made it clear he hadn't been missed. The man announced with nonchalance that a brand new labyrinth had just been discovered. Rude's breath caught in his throat. A new labyrinth. That meant untouched treasure, powerful artifacts, maybe even a chance to climb out of obscurity. No wonder the guild felt so chaotic, as if delivering an afterthought. The man went on to mention the herbs Rude had been collecting, informing him casually that their market value had just taken a nosedive. Eyes darting toward the bulletin board, he confirmed the grim news. The price had dropped from 1,000 to a mere 300. The shock hit like a hammer as he staggered forward in disbelief. With measured calm, the man explained the situation. The newly found labyrinth had shifted the focus of all resource gathering. No one would be returning to the old one anytime soon. Miasma grass was no longer in demand, standing frozen. Rude struggled to process what he had just heard. His voice cracked with desperation as he protested, begging for an alternative, asking if there was any other path that might let him enter the new labyrinth. The guild receptionist, clearly exhausted by such inquiries, let out a deep sigh. She reminded him of the iron rules. Even if by some miracle he made it in, he'd likely meet his end without making it past the entryway. Rude stood there, his hands balled tightly at his sides, trembling with a sense of injustice he could neither fight nor escape. Why did the world have to turn its back on him so cruelly? And just as hopelessness began to take hold, another voice called from behind. If he truly wanted to go so badly, perhaps he'd be willing to join as a porter. A figure stepped forward, with measured steps, an almost imperceptible smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, locking eyes with Rude as though sizing him up for something more. The carriage traveled steadily along the narrow mountain road, its wheels creaking softly as it rocked with each uneven bump. Within the enclosed space, the group appeared worn from the lengthy expedition. Seated directly across from Rude, he conveyed his pleasure at finally meeting Rude, explaining that he had been tirelessly searching for someone willing to transport supplies. Rude chose to remain silent, his thoughts turning inward. It wasn't surprising. Practically every adventurer in the region had already stormed toward the new dungeon in a frenzy of opportunity and greed, leaving no one behind for minor roles like his. The difficulty in securing a willing porter was quickly made clear as another adventurer voiced their disapproval. The words were sharp and unkind, laced with visible irritation at the decision to bring along a mere poison gas scavenger. The young man who had greeted Rude chuckled nervously in response. Attempting to dispel the tension, he defended the decision. With an easygoing tone and a gesture of welcome, the man introduced himself formally as Bear, the leader of the Scarlet Sword Party. He also presented his comrades Sasha and Rick, mentioning that all three were ranked D adventurers. Rude, only an E rank himself, returned the courtesy with subdued politeness. However, Bear soon asked to inspect his guild card. Holding it up, Rude allowed the faint glow from the magical seal to activate, displaying his identification and listed skills. Bear raised an eyebrow in surprise upon noticing fire magic among Rude's capabilities. Rude, however, quickly clarified that the magic wasn't practical in battle. This prompted a laugh from the others, who found such modest talents unexpectedly convenient. The carriage rolled onward as the road twisted through jagged terrain, and the conversation turned lighter. The faces of the three adventurers brightened with excitement, their optimism radiating across the wooden cabin. Eventually, Bear leaned near the window's edge and pointed with enthusiasm at the landscape ahead. Their destination had come into view: the newly discovered Yahello labyrinth. The structure appeared ancient and partially crumbled, cloaked in mystery. Still, the thrill of the unknown was evident in their expressions. They believed they might be among the first to arrive. Without hesitation, the group prepared to enter. The towering doors groaned as they slowly opened, revealing the labyrinth's shadowed interior. But instead of silence, they were greeted with the bustling chaos of a crowd. Dozens of other adventurers had already claimed the space, some bartering at makeshift market stalls, others inspecting gathered relics or clashing with monsters deeper in the halls. Frustration welled up in Sasha as she gripped her forehead and groaned at the unanticipated competition. Bear, on the other hand, kept his composure. He noted calmly that the first level had clearly been combed through already. Rick, maintaining his usual hopeful tone, suggested that pressing onward might offer better rewards and fewer rivals. From the rear of the group, Ruth finally spoke, offering an alternative. He suggested that a detailed map of the first floor should be created. Before proceeding further downward, the reaction was immediate. Displeasure flickered across the faces of the other adventurers, but before the tension could build further, Bear raised a hand to silence them. He supported Rude's reasoning, emphasizing that careful planning would yield greater success than rushing in blind. With conflict averted and the plan adjusted, the group advanced deeper into the labyrinth, their steps more measured, their goals newly aligned. On the fourth floor of the Yahello labyrinth, a strange stillness clung to the air like damp cloth. Towering before them was a massive wolf, and its glowing eyes radiated a predator's focus. Though none in the party voiced it, the tension was unmistakable and spoken, but suffocating. Yet Rick stepped forward with casual poise, drawing his sword with a practiced flick of the wrist. His stance dismissed the threat as beneath him. Without hesitation, her expression focused, her hands moving fluidly as she summoned a surge of magical energy. One of the wolves dropped instantly. The rest of the party surged into action, blades flashing, spells flying, bodies moving in harmony, coordination turning chaos into dominance. All except Rude. He remained behind, locked in place, his hands cold and trembling. The strength his companions displayed, swift, confident, absolute, left him motionless. Shame. The largest wolf was slain with barely a challenge. The rest fell just as quickly. Silence returned to the floor, and with it came satisfied grins from the team. The gamble of pushing deeper into the labyrinth had already begun to pay off. Bear's pride was thinly veiled, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of further threats or hidden treasure. Several artifacts and valuables glittered among the fallen, already hinting at a successful haul. Rick, however, shifted his focus, remembering the routine that followed every battle. He gestured at the corpses, his gaze drifting toward Rude, expecting the task of scavenging to begin. Rude responded with quiet composure. He calmly explained that the force of the attacks had left the corpses in poor condition, and it was likely the magic stones embedded within had been destroyed. Rick's expression darkened, his eyes narrowed slightly, revealing clear irritation. He questioned Rude's judgment without raising his voice, but the bite in his stare was unmistakable. Rude, recalling the brutal efficiency with which Rick had dealt with the monsters, hesitated only briefly before nodding in reluctant agreement and moving toward the remains. As he drew closer to the wolf corpses, the stench became unbearable. The air reeked of scorched fur and torn flesh, Raising one hand, he conjured a small flame, driven by morbid curiosity. What would happen if he burned the remains? Could something unexpected occur from behind? Rick gave a derisive snort. His mockery was audible, filled with amusement at what he clearly saw as foolishness. Yet Sasha stepped in with seriousness, reminding the group of the strict prohibition against consuming or tampering with monster flesh, especially due to the potential danger posed by unstable magical energy. Rick responded with a dismissive laugh, assuring everyone that he had no such intentions. The light tone in his voice lingered until the ground shook. A thunderous rumble tore through the chamber. The stone trembled beneath their feet. Dust and pebbles rained down from the ceiling above. Torches flickered wildly. For a moment, the entire group stood frozen in place. Even Bayer, ever collected, looked genuinely startled. Rude's breath caught again as a shadow moved at the far end of the cavern. Then it stepped into view, an enormous figure, hulking and dreadful, obstruct stone with ominous weight, muscles coiled like ropes beneath leathery skin. A bull's head rested atop a humanoid torso, eyes burning with hatred. One hand gripped a battle axe the size of a full-grown man. Rude could barely think. A B-rank monster on the 4th floor. It shouldn't have been possible. Such a creature didn't belong here. His thoughts spiraled, unable to reconcile the reality before him. The others felt it too. The party's confidence shattered in an instant. Their expressions turned to disbelief, then panic. Words failed them. Bayer snapped back to reality first, his voice cut through the rising fear, commanding Rude to hand over his pouch and to distract the monster, anything to buy time. Rude hesitated, stunned by the order. His lips parted, doubt creeping into his voice as he tried to make sense of the demand. Was there really a plan? Could Bayer see a way out of this? A smile crept across Bayer's face, sharp, calculating. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, his sword cleaved through the air, its attention drawn instantly to the strike. Bayer turned, issuing swift orders to the others. Sasha and Rick responded with fierce grins. Anticipation gleamed in their eyes. Without a word, Sasha activated her brave warrior's skill. It marked a target, painting it as the monster's sole focus, but to Rude's growing horror, the axe did not land on the Minotaur. It struck the ground beside him. The mark had been placed on him. The Minotaur's gaze shifted instantly. Bloodlust poured from its eyes as it locked onto Rude like a predator spotting prey. The others simply stood back, amusement rising in their eyes, as if what they had done was a perfectly reasonable sacrifice. Suddenly, Rude felt a surge of unnatural speed coursing through him. Haste had activated, but it was no blessing. It ensured he couldn't hide. The realization struck him he had been set up from the beginning. Bayer's arrogance shone through as he declared that bringing along a poison fog scavenger was the only reason Rude was there. Rude stood frozen, comprehension dawning on him as he faced outright betrayal. The group turned away without a second thought, leaving him behind with smug grins. They were merely buying themselves time. Overwhelmed by frustration, Rude fell to the ground, shouting in anger at their betrayal. But the Minotaur had already closed the distance, its menacing gaze fixed on him. With a swift motion, its massive arm swung forward, delivering a brutal strike that sent Rude flying, pain radiating through his entire body. Weakly, he murmured to himself about deserving this fate. Dizziness washed over him as his vision blurred. It felt like the end. The Minotaur advanced, raising its fist high before slamming it down. Bones cracked, flesh screamed in agony. Rude felt as if his entire being had shattered, his insides pulverized. He hit the ground hard, the impact breaking through rock and debris. Yet, unexpectedly, the Minotaur's massive frame tumbled after him, plunging into a hidden pit below. Darkness enveloped them, leaving only faint echoes behind. Groaning, Rude slowly opened his eyes, dazed and confused. Was he still alive? His gaze fell upon the fallen Minotaur beneath him, realizing that the creature had cushioned his fall, inadvertently saving him from a grisly fate. However, Rude understood that this reprieve was temporary. Without other monsters to contend with, he would succumb to starvation or blood loss before he ever recovered. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light appeared. The faint outline of a man took shape before Rude's eyes. The man spoke softly, his gaze fixed firmly, imparting words of wisdom. No matter how difficult or painful life may become, one must never give up. In the next instant, driven by pure hunger and desperation, Rude tore into the monster's flesh, devouring it without hesitation. An overwhelming surge of power coursed through him, the raw strength of the creature he had just consumed flooding his being. When a human on the verge of magical exhaustion consumes monster flesh, their body does not simply recover, it undergoes monsterization, a terrifying transformation far worse than death by poisoning. The dark cave came alive. Countless pairs of glowing eyes stared down from the jagged ceiling, silently observing. Bat-like creatures, small yet unsettling, clung to the rocky outcroppings. Above, their beady eyes glinting as they locked onto the lone human below. Rude's face contorted unnaturally, transforming into something more beast than man. The moment he stepped into their territory, the bats screeched, swarming toward him and attacking mercilessly. Yet Rude stood unfazed, drawing upon the lingering power of the Manhwa he had consumed, he unleashed a monstrous guttural war cry. The cavern shook with his thunderous bellow, echoing through the air. The bats scattered in every direction, completely overwhelmed. Without pause, Rude tapped into another ability, body reinforcement. A temporary boost flooded his limbs with raw, brutal strength. With ease, he struck down the remaining bats, tearing through them like paper. Not content with merely defeating them, Rude grinned darkly as he feasted on their charred, leathery flesh. Another power surged within him, echolocation. This new skill sharpened his awareness, allowing him to map his surroundings in perfect clarity, even in the depths of darkness. The moment he activated it, countless faint outlines appeared in his mind, grotesque creatures hidden throughout the cave. His eyes gleamed with a primal, monstrous hunger. His body now fully transformed, he was ready for the hunt. Rude unleashed his newfound strength, effortlessly slicing through everything in his path. The creatures' bodies were torn apart, unable to resist as they collapsed in agony. Rude felt the battle axe resting perfectly in his hand, the weight, the balance. Everything felt natural. He could even sense the lingering magic of the nearby monsters without needing to see them. His eyes glowed with a crazed, bloodthirsty light as he stared ahead. In mere moments, the remaining monsters were shredded to pieces, their corpses falling at his feet. Just like that, Rude devoured them all. In this monstrous, twisted form, his bloodlust only grew. With each creature consumed, his body became stronger, more terrifying. His clenched fist trembled, not with fear, but with the raw power coursing through his veins as he gripped the weapon tighter. Rude's twisted smile widened as the remaining monsters snarled, poised to strike at any moment. Yet he didn't flinch, not for a second. With determination, he turned, weapon in hand, walking slowly toward the exit of the dark, suffocating labyrinth. Step by step, he approached the blinding light ahead. When he emerged, his body froze, eyes widening in disbelief as sunlight poured down upon him. The axe slipped from his fingers, clattering to the ground. A relieved, almost giddy smile crept onto his lips. He had made it. He was alive. The beautiful open space beyond the maze welcomed him. Exhilaration surged through Rude, his heart pounding fiercely as he returned to the Adventurers Guild. The elegant hall buzzed quietly with whispers, a tense yet oddly subdued atmosphere hanging in the air. Uneasy glances passed between the gathered crowd. News of the blood sword party's return and the dark tidings they carried had seeded suspicion deep among them. At the center stood Lancre, the head of the Bologna branch of the guild, an older man with neatly combed white hair and a stern expression. He had summoned all relevant adventurers. Upon hearing their report, Bayer positioned himself at the forefront, his face marked by sorrow and regret. Their encounter with the monster on the 4th floor had ended with Rude's apparent death. Despite their desperate attempts to protect him, Lancre listened gravely. Ben declared an immediate lockdown of the labyrinth. Nearby, a receptionist who had been bored moments before snapped to attention. The main door creaked open, and Rude stepped inside. Time seemed to freeze. Shock rippled through the hall. Every eye locked on the man the miasma scavenger presumed dead. Disbelief painted every face. Mouths agape, struggling to grasp the impossible sight before them. Even Lancre appeared stunned, struggling to process Rude's unexpected return. Bayer's eyes widened as he rushed forward, relief briefly shining in his gaze. But that light quickly faded, replaced by a dark, threatening shadow. His voice dropped to a cold whisper, one wrong word from Rude, and Bayer would become his executioner. The others closed in swiftly, their faces wearing masks of concern where he practiced and rehearsed. Words carefully chosen for effect, but Rude met their smiles with icy, unyielding eyes. There would be no celebration here. Before he could speak, a flicker crossed their faces, confusion giving way to panic. Immobility gripped the room. The truth crystallized in Rude's mind. Something was terribly wrong. His voice cut through the tension, steady and resolute, exposing his reality. He had been nothing more than a disposable pawn. The revelation hit like thunder. Bayer, the group's leader, spun toward Rude. Disbelief etched deep in his features. Another adventurer stepped forward, confusion evident in his questioning gaze. Rude, cold and determined, recounted the betrayal, Bayer's theft of his supplies, the cruel ambush, how Rick's skill had been used to steer the monster toward him, and Sash's speed boost that had facilitated their escape. The accusation ignited uproar. Bayer's face twisted in fury, his denial sharp and immediate. Yet the guildmaster raised a calm hand, silencing the chaos. His gesture beckoned toward a young woman, standing nearby, one whose testimony would verify the truth. A woman clad in a witch's uniform stepped forward, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the hall. The onlookers instinctively recoiled. A truth officer was a rare figure outside the capital, known for wielding an unassailable power. The guildmaster addressed the assembly, explaining that her arrival was prompted by the recent mysterious deaths of several porters who had worked with Bayer's party. A low murmur spread through the crowd as the implications settled among them. With a voice that resonated clearly and carried undeniable authority, the guildmaster introduced the truth officer's role. to determine the veracity of the conflicting accounts. The officer's piercing gaze swept across the room, scrutinizing each individual silently. Her response was calm yet resolute. She declared the statements offered by the Blood Sword Party false, confirming the accuracy of Rude's testimony. Without hesitation, shock distorted Bayer's features as the hall fell into stunned silence, broken only by whispers that quickly escalated into alarm. Bayer's anger ignited as he vehemently challenged the truth officer's competence. The guildmaster responded with a cold, disdainful expression, elaborating on the nature of the truth's skill and intrinsic ability far beyond even the most extraordinary, unique powers. He emphasized that no falsehood, regardless of scale, could evade detection under this skill's scrutiny. The truth officer's unwavering loyalty was underlined by her oath. As a knight dedicated to the nation's protection, Bayer's arrogance dissolved swiftly, replaced by an expression of fear and disbelief. The guildmaster's voice rose in fury, denouncing the grievous betrayal of one's comrades as the most heinous offense an adventurer could commit. The deliberate wounding of Rude and using him as bait would lead to the revocation of their adventuring licenses and a harsh sentence of enslavement. The members of the Blood Sword Party shrank back, faces pale and taut with panic. One member trembled uncontrollably at the prospect of enslavement, his fear giving way to a sudden, furious outburst. Without warning, he lunged toward the truth officer, sword drawn and eyes blazing with rage. Gasps rippled through the crowd, as even the truth officer momentarily froze. Yet Rude reacted immediately, stepping forward with unwavering resolve to prevent any harm from befalling her. His strike was swift and precise, sending the attacker sprawling to the floor with a heavy impact that silenced the room. The remaining members of the Blood Sword Party stood motionless, their expressions drained of color and words. Rude's voice broke the tense silence, firm and unyielding as he chastised the reckless assault. Later, within the guild's reception room, the guildmaster regarded Rude with a serious expression marked by concern over his evident exhaustion. Nevertheless, Rude insisted that the fate of the Blood Sword Party was of greater importance. The guildmaster assured him that they would face a thorough investigation, and should their guilt be confirmed, they would be stripped of their licenses and condemned to slavery. A weary sigh escaped the guildmaster as he noted that Bayer's violent attack upon a truth officer would result in his permanent expulsion from the guild. The guildmaster presented Rude with a heavy pouch of coins, the forfeited share of the Blood Sword Party, from the new labyrinth's profits. As the weight of 200,000 regions settled into his hands, disbelief washed over him. A broad grin slowly spread across his face, the promise of finally clearing some debts lighting his features. His gaze sharpened as he surveyed the room, poised to leave yet wary. Though overt insults might cease, kindness would not follow. He understood the need for caution. His sudden surge in strength would inevitably attract unwanted attention. Resolute, he decided to remain within the confines of the miasma labyrinth, seeking steady, reliable income. A quiet sigh escaped him as he resolved to focus on the future new equipment, and at last, a satisfying meal. His eyes caught sight of a magic pouch displayed in a nearby shop, but hunger won out. He decided to eat first. The next day found him deep within the labyrinth, his newly acquired wealth and his recent ordeal fresh in his mind. His increased strength, however, demanded a more cautious approach. The other lizard soldiers reacted instantly, roaring with bloodthirsty excitement. They gripped their blades, charging as one. But Rude was ready. He activated his enhanced physique skill without hesitation. A surge of raw power filled his body, muscles tightening, energy exploding within him. With a fierce shout, he propelled himself forward, determined to crush them all. The surrounding monsters didn't even have time to react. In a blink, his powerful legs slammed into the nearest enemy, driving it headfirst into the ground. Rude's hand tightened on his sword as he advanced, his eyes fixed on the lizard captain. Across the battlefield, the boss monster's eyes widened in disbelief at the brutal display. The tables had turned. Rude gritted his teeth, glaring down from above, his presence radiating overwhelming dominance. He declared the captain's defeat. The massive creature was sent flying by the force of his strike. However, what happened next left Rude completely stunned. The creature rose, completely unharmed, not a scratch on its enormous body. Before Rude could process this, another large blade gleamed from the side, slicing toward him and unavoidable. Attacked out at the last possible moment, Rude activated another skill, Iron Body. His entire body hardened, reinforced by the monstrous strength he had absorbed from the spider he defeated earlier. A confident smirk played on his lips. He wasn't the only one with a trump card. The monster's eyes widened, visibly shaken. Rude, poised to strike, was suddenly confused. He felt the impact land, yet the enemy showed no signs of injury. It lacked durability-boosting abilities. He had already confirmed that. Something else was at play. Rude's sharp eyes quickly scanned the area, focusing on a nearby lizard. One ability stood out among its listed skills: substitution. The smaller lizard was taking damage in place of the boss. The unfortunate creature trembled as its body was brutally pierced. Rude's cold, piercing gaze fell upon it. It must suck to be just cannon fodder and still end up as a sacrificial pawn. The lizard's eyes widened in disbelief as it collapsed. Defeated instantly, Rude casually finished it off. Across the battlefield, the lizard captain howled in rage and anguish, its roars echoing through the cavern. The remaining lizard soldiers, fueled by fury, raised their weapons and charged. But Rude was prepared. Using his stolen spider abilities, he conjured countless strands of silk, launching a web shot. Thick threads burst into the air, encircling the area. The monsters froze, staring upward in disbelief as Rude gracefully maneuvered through the air, completing his trap. Their clustered formation only made his task easier. He unleashed a massive, reinforced spider web, ensnaring the enemy. The lizard captain roared in frustration as its soldiers became instantly entangled in the sticky, unbreakable threads. Even the boss itself struggled under the growing disadvantage. As Rude's silhouette loomed, the captain's gaze sharpened. It was too late. With a smug grin, Rude declared his victory. His blade sliced downward. The lizard captain's head separated cleanly, tumbling to the ground. Its agonized death cry echoed through the dark maze, sealing Rude's overwhelming victory. The creature's severed head lay motionless, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of its fellow lizardmen. A faint smirk curled Rude's lips. Dinner time, he mused. His eyes drifted to the magic pouch at his side. His smirk widened. He had purchased it with the guild's money. It was time to put it to use. A magic pouch, an item that expanded space, magically, drastically reducing the weight of its contents when sealed. With practiced ease, Rude retrieved cooking utensils. A small pan clinked softly against a cutting board. As he set them down, neatly organized spice jars followed. Rude picked up a sharp knife, expertly slicing into the monster meat. He recalled his desperate situation on the hidden floor, where survival had been his only goal. His knife continued its precise work. He had always wanted to try this. Sizzling meat hit the heated pan. Fragrant spices were sprinkled generously. Monster meat. He couldn't help but gulp hungrily. Without hesitation, Rude bit into the cooked meat. His eyes lit up with delight. He began devouring the entire plate. He was surprised by the deliciousness of the monster meat. He was becoming addicted. As he ate, his skill window popped up, drawing a grin across his face. He had gained several useful skills: one-handed sword mastery, shield technique, miasma resistance, and command manipulation. He wondered if this was related to the monster's magical power, recalling the invaluable steel silk carapace and demon eyes abilities from the giant spider. Rude had acquired numerous bizarre, yet useful abilities from countless vanquished monsters. Yet some remained untested: the Thunderwolf and the Dark Serpent. Finishing the last bite of monster steak, satisfaction played on his lips. He resolved to sample a wider variety of monster meats on his return journey. Another thought that occurred to him: the humanoid lizards he'd encountered, possessing the substitution skill, were still plentiful later. On the 21st floor of the miasma labyrinth, strange, alluring scents drifted from massive moths and butterflies. Giant toads exhaled sickly, noxious fumes, yet Rude barely flinched. With a crackle of lightning, he unleashed a devastating electric strike, a lightning spear. The airborne insects combusted instantly, falling as charred heaps. Amusement sparkled in his eyes as he examined his hands. Skills like these made life significantly easier. These monsters were clearly designed to inflict debilitating debuffs, poison, weakness, paralysis, but they had chosen the wrong opponent. Grinning, Rude retrieved his trusty frying pan, effortlessly resuming his role as an amateur dungeon chef. Frog meat and insect meat called for a clear cooking method, deep frying to perfection. In the blink of an eye, the once terrifying monsters were transformed into a steaming, golden, crispy platter of food. The young man cheerfully devoured the last pieces, savoring every bite. The poisonous frogs, though deadly, possessed incredibly juicy meat. The spices enhanced the flavor, creating an incredible culinary experience. A cold beer would have been the perfect complement. As he licked his fingers clean, the familiar skill window appeared, listing newly acquired abilities. A noise echoed through the cavern, shattering his contentment. His head snapped up, suspicion narrowed his eyes. The sounds of combat and human voices reached him. A sly grin crept across his face. Other adventurers were nearby. Without delay, Rude packed his cooking tools into the magic pouch. He dashed toward the commotion, his step light and quick, as if heading to meet an old friend. A good brawl was a rare opportunity. He might even exchange information with these adventurers. As he drew closer, the sounds of clashing swords and blood splattering filled the air. A group of armed men stood over a young woman who had collapsed. Clutching her side, They wore sharp, polished armor, their blades stained with fresh blood. Their leader sneered at the wounded girl, disdain lacing his voice before they could act. A calm voice called out from behind them. The sudden interruption jolted the group. They spun around, suspicion narrowing their eyes. Rude emerged from the shadows, casually strolling forward. He couldn't stand idly by while they ganged up on a girl. The scar-faced leader sized him up with obvious disgust. Rude flashed a cocky smirk, identifying himself as an adventurer low-ranked E-class. The elf girl's eyes widened at his appearance. Fear laced her voice as she warned him of the bounty hunter's elite, dangerous, cutthroat adventurers. Rude froze momentarily. These were not ordinary adventurers, they were elite, dangerous, and ruthless. Their leader was level 65. The others were seasoned veterans. For the first time, a serious expression clouded Rude's face. These individuals likely possessed hidden abilities and anti-magic gear. The scarred leader gave a simple order: pin him down. A bounty hunter charged at Rude. Rude's eyes widened slightly, barely reacting in time. He blocked the strike, but the sheer power behind it was unlike anything he'd faced before. The bounty hunter smirked, impressed, despite the disadvantage. Rude held his ground, a smirk forming on his face. The man's face twitched with anger. Rude took a deep breath, exhaling a faint green mist onto his blade poison. A sickly green vapor quickly coated the sword, a sinister aura radiating from it. The bounty hunter froze, agony shooting through his body. He staggered back, clutching himself. The other man's eyes widened in disbelief. The group stared at Rude. Unsettled by his strange fighting style, Rude smiled wider, defiance gleaming in his eyes. The poison man's skin paled as the venom took hold. Their leader quickly understood a unique poison skill. His expression darkened. The remaining bounty hunters lunged forward with deadly precision. Rude ducked, dodging the first strike, but a vicious boot slammed into his chest, sending him flying. He activated steel body at the last second, surviving the impact, but his momentum carried him into a nearby marshy pond. The bounty hunter peered down, pride evident in his voice. Beneath the murky water, Rude pushed himself upright. The leader's grin widened, but as they prepared to finish him, Rude's footsteps echoed faintly across the water's surface. He was retreating deeper into the swamp. The hunters stared, momentarily dumbfounded. The older hunter stopped them. The swamp was filled with deadly toxins. Venturing deeper meant certain death. The older hunter believed Rude wouldn't last long. Rude, however, observed the bounty hunters from the swamp's edge, their growing unease evident. Their frustrated voices carried across the toxic marsh. Rude smirked. Their stamina would be drained by the poison in the air. Their breathing grew heavier. Signs of fatigue were appearing on their faces. Rude's expression turned serious. It was time. He had hoped to wait them out, but the elf girl's injuries were too severe. He walked toward them, his voice cool and confident. The group's eyes lit up as they spotted him emerging from the swamp, believing he had given up. Rude's arrogant smile never wavered. He pointed out their weakened state, highlighting his own immunity to the poison. The leader's face twisted with shock. He had underestimated Rude's abilities. The leader roared in frustration, ordering an attack. The men charged, their swords clashing against the swamp's resistance, but their drained strength made them sluggish. Rude's smile widened as he analyzed the situation. The poison had weakened them significantly. Suddenly, movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention. Another attacker lunged. Rude activated steel body, his skin hardening. The attack landed with a dull thud, yet inflicted barely a scratch. The bounty hunter's eyes widened in shock. Rude didn't hesitate. Lightning erupted. A deafening crack of thunder followed, bolts of lightning surging outward. The bounty hunters were caught in the blast, their bodies convulsing violently before collapsing into smoldering, charred heaps. The leader, though blackened and burned, staggered back, fury evident. A faint, shimmering glow surrounded his hands as he summoned his next skill, targeting Rude. But Rude was prepared. A familiar counter technique materialized, deflecting the attack. The leader's eyes widened in horror. The sight of a human wielding monster skills was impossible. Frozen in disbelief, he trembled. Rude, his grip firm on his sword, maintained a sharp, unwavering expression. He charged without a word. The leader, visibly unsettled, felt panic rising. His initial advantage had vanished. Full-blown fear twisted his face. Facing this formidable opponent, defeat seemed inevitable. The poison's effects were taking their toll. He activated his speed boost skill, refusing to lose to a mere child. He lunged forward with all his might, but Rude remained unfazed. Calmly activating strength boost, he amplified his physical power. In an instant, the leader's sword shattered into fragments, blown apart by sheer force. The others met a similar fate. Their bodies were effortlessly sliced down. The leader crashed to the ground, groaning in pain. Rude stood firm, his cold eyes fixed on the fallen man. A faint smirk played on his lips as he muttered about the bounty hunter's vulnerability to debuffs. The elf girl approached, a slightly awkward expression on her face. Her gratitude was clear. She wouldn't have survived without his intervention. Rude studied her. She was trying to appear brave, but the miasma's effects were still apparent. He had already helped ease her condition, but her presence in such a remote location was unusual. He wondered about the circumstances that led to her being hunted by bounty hunters. Before he could question her, a loud sound erupted, demanding their full attention. A massive butterfly descended, its wings pulsing with eerie light. Rude instantly activated his appraisal skill. It was the boss of the moth swarm, a level 37 beast with 6 different poisonous attributes. It presented a significant threat. Rude's body shot forward, his eyes locked on the creature. The towering creature retaliated instantly. Unleashing its full power, something felt amiss. The attack, Sky Sever, was a brutal strike, easily capable of ripping through most enemies. Yet Rude countered with his own Sky Sever skill. The massive creature coughed up blood, writhing in agony. It released a powerful paralytic attack in desperation, but Rude remained unaffected. His eyes widened sharply, not because the attack was aimed at him, but because the elf girl had become the target. Yet she was far from defenseless. With swift resolve, she unleashed a radiant burst of energy from her staff, striking the massive butterfly with a searing blast. The creature crashed violently to the ground, its wings shredded and broken. Slightly impressed, Rude closed the distance and finished the fallen beast with a precise, swift strike. The girl, still catching her breath, looked up at him with wide, confused eyes. She remarked on his immunity to poison and paralysis, commenting on the monstrous nature of his skills. An awkward silence settled over Rude, a flush creeping over him. She winced in pain, her face tightening as discomfort showed. Concerned, Rude stepped closer, but she quickly dismissed the notion of an old injury. Something else was sapping her strength. She inquired when he intended to leave, promising to reveal the full story once they had escaped the labyrinth. Her gaze drifted toward the creeping darkness beyond, her expression shadowed with unease. Moments later, filtered sunlight bathed them as they emerged into open air. Exhausted but relieved, they settled beneath a sprawling tree. The girl leaned back, breathing deeply, and introduced herself as Alicia, a former adventurer. Rude's eyes widened in astonishment. Alicia from Emerald Feather herself. Alicia chuckled softly, pride reclaiming her smile, still stunned. Rude confirmed his knowledge of the prestigious top-tier guilds. Alicia's tone grew somber as she recounted the tragic events that had devastated her guild 5 years earlier. A monstrous guardian in the Abyssal Labyrinth's deepest floor had claimed their captain's life. One member was crippled, another vanished without a trace. Alicia herself had barely survived. Concern creased Rude's brow as his gaze fell upon a strange, glowing mark etched across Alicia's chest, a curse mark. Her expression darkened as she explained its origin, a lesser curse inflicted long ago. Rude, sitting beside her, frowned thoughtfully. He had never encountered such a malady before. Alicia's bitterness was palpable. She had exhausted every remnant of potions, purification rituals, magic, even ancient spells, only to watch the curse grow stronger. Her frustration deepened, revealing how the bounty hunters had exploited this weakness, keeping her debilitated. The curse's gradual effect would ultimately reduce her level to 0. A death sentence she refused to accept. Suddenly, realization dawned in Rude's eyes. Retrieving a faintly glowing card from his pouch, a tool capable of transferring damage, debuffs, and possibly curses, he resolved to help. Determination gleamed as he offered to attempt a transfer. Alicia's confusion was evident, but mingled with a flicker of hope. Gently, Rude placed his hand over the cursed mark and activated his substitution skill. Channeling the strange energy, Alicia's body pulsed warmly as the mark flickered, the curse's hold shifting. Panic seized her as she grabbed his wrist, warning him to stop. Yet, Rude's calm smile remained unshaken. For a fleeting moment, a dark demonic silhouette flickered behind him, radiating a suffocating aura of bloodlust. Still, Rude stood firm. The girl was unable to comprehend the immense power she sensed this boy carried within him. The combined might of countless monsters. His unique skill, status effect immunity, had fully activated, banishing the monstrous presence instantly. Satisfaction lit Rude's face as he flexed his fingers. The girl stared blankly, struggling to process the miraculous change. Casually, Rude suggested she check her guild ID. She swiftly produced her adventurer's card. Eyes widening in disbelief, the curse mark was gone, vanished without trace. Disbelief contorted her features, tears shimmered in her eyes. Rude explained his ability to negate harmful effects, surmising he had absorbed and broken the curse. Instead of relief, she scolded him for risking so much for a stranger. Yet a genuine, bright smile soon followed, conveying heartfelt gratitude. The tension within Rude finally eased. Offering his hand with a gentle smile, he invited trust. Later, amid the bustling Adventurers Guild, a heavy glass of liquor slammed onto the table. Alicia sat opposite him, radiating excitement. She laughed, raising her glass in a celebratory toast. Rude sighed quietly, recalling the bruising he had suffered here not long ago. Concerned, he cautioned her against drinking so freely so soon after her injuries. But Alicia waved him off with a grin, insisting this was a moment for celebration. Their glasses clinked. Rude then asked about her future plans. Alicia's response was unexpected. She wished to learn more about him, specifically his reasons for becoming an adventurer. Painful memories surfaced as Rude recounted the destruction of his village by monsters, the loss of his family and friends, and the memory of a powerful S-rank adventurer who had saved him. He vowed to reach that rank himself, to protect others from similar fates. Alicia smiled warmly, acknowledging the nobility of his goal. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, blending laughter and determination. Rude tilted his head with a smirk. Alicia chuckled, sharing her own ambition to grow stronger, to rescue her trapped comrades in the Absol labyrinth. She reached across the table, suggesting a partnership. Rude blinked, stunned, but before he could respond, a rough hand interrupted. Nearby, a group of gruff men loitered, grinning lecherously at Alicia. One muttered about finding the perfect drinking partner. Recognition flickered in Rude's eyes. They were the same men who had attacked him here before. They loomed over him, looking down as if he were an insignificant insect, approaching Alicia. Their voices dripped with arrogance. But before they could come closer, a firm hand shot out from behind them, halting their advance. Rude, eyes sharp and cold, standing resolute,